the worst pick of the draft was by the San Antonio Spurs, selecting Josh Primo with the 12th overall pick. And this begs the question, are the Spurs an overrated franchise when it comes to evaluating talent and selecting in the draft? Since 2014, these have been their first-round picks. Kyle Anderson, Nikola Milutinov, DeJounte Murray, Derek White, Lonnie Walker, Lucas Samanic, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Josh Primo. Their best pick has been DeJounte Murray in the first round. And DeJounte Murray is a good player, but they have not drafted an all-star since 2014 in the first round. They have also not picked in the highest of spots as well.
Agreed. Wasn't that a trade too?
No, they drafted DeJounte.
What was the George Hill trade? No, it's about for Kawhi.
George Hill was the George Hill trade, yeah. That was in 2013, I believe, or 2012. One of those.
So they didn't even draft Kawhi, right?
They drafted him. They did draft him.
Okay.
But the thing about it is that if you look at the Spurs draft history in the past 20 years, the only players that they have drafted in the first round that have became all-stars have been Tony Parker and Kawhi Leonard, which means that in that 18-year window, they have not drafted any all-star. And this is a team that gets a lot of credit for scouting. But in reality, I think they're overrated because Tim Duncan is really the reason their franchise got saved when they got the number 1 overall pick and they lucked out because David Robinson was hurt. That won in a championship. Tony Parker obviously was a great find. Manu Ginobili also in the second round. That really set up their franchise for success in a matter that whatever guys you surround around that big three, the team will still be successful. They didn't have to draft well. And then Kawhi Leonard, they made that pick, but I think Kawhi Leonard becoming good was more in part to him just having a legendary work ethic more so than their development, because ever since drafting Kawhi, they have tried to draft these athletic guys like Lonnie Walker. He hasn't panned out. Devin Vassell, we'll see what he becomes. Kyle Anderson, out of UCLA, he was good, and he's turned into an okay NBA player, but he hasn't turned into he didn't turn into that with the Spurs. He turned into that in Memphis. Mm-hmm. DeJounte Murray, Derek White is okay. He's average. I mean, Keldon Johnson averaged 12 points per game last year. I mean, these guys, I feel like none of them stand out, and Josh Primo might be another one of those guys who probably is just a 3-and-D player in the NBA.
I think everything you just told me basically said the Spurs know how to draft good players. Just solid, good guys who can start in the league or come off the bench. DeJounte Murray's a good player. Derek Wright's a good player. Keldon Johnson's becoming a nice, solid player. Devin Vassell, I think he's going to be a nice, solid player. But I think a lot of this is a testament to Greg Popovich's stubbornness. I think over the years, the last few years, he's been very stubborn with playing his young players, and he's been very stubborn in trying to maintain that playoff route. And I think, like you said, the Spurs development team hasn't been great. A lot of these guys haven't panned out to be stars. They've kind of been in a situation where they're just stuck in the middle. And I think with this draft, they could have, maybe made a push for an all-star or maybe made some noise, maybe. But then you go out and reach for a Josh Primo. And now if he turns out to be a star, obviously we're going to look like idiots. But even then, you picking that, you were just guessing. Same thing with Kawhi. You pick him becoming a legendary star. That's more to Kawhi than anything. You guys didn't know he was going to be this guy. You didn't know he was going to be one of the best two-way players of all time. You didn't expect that. So I think, like you said, the development team in San Antonio needs to be worked up. They need to be fixed up because right now they're trending towards lottery. And if they keep picking picks like this, they're never going to get back to that Spurs legendary, like that Spurs dynasty that we know them for being, a team that's winning 56 games, making the playoffs consistently. It's not going to get to that point unless they figure out how to draft.
Also, in that Kawhi trade, instead of having the hindsight of, okay, we need to blow it up now, they got back DeRozan, who gave them some good seasons, but it was just a lateral move when they could have gotten back Jakob Poeltl and OG Anunoby, and now had OG as their centerpiece cornerstone player who had a lot of similarities to Kawhi coming out of college.
We don't even know if they'd have developed them right.
I feel like the tough thing here is that these draft picks, aside from obviously these last 2 years, they're not amazing draft picks. Even these last 2 years, 11 and 12. Of course, there's teams that hit, and San Antonio has been known for hitting, but it's tough to hit on 19, 18, 19.
I think that's a testament to them trying to stay competitive when they don't have the pieces.
I 100% agree with that. Their inability to accept we are not a championship contender and we're just going to go out every single night and try to win. I respect that more than I respect a team that's tanking like a Philadelphia did. It worked out for them, of course. They got Joel Embiid. They got Ben Simmons, whatever you want to say about him. They got very good pieces by being bad. They refused to do that. They trusted their draft process, and they allowed themselves to stay where they were and continue to play the hardest basketball that they possibly could. And it just put them in that awkward position, like you mentioned, where they're not in a great draft position, but they're not in a bad draft position. And it's tough to consistently keep drafting good players there. And you're 100% right. These players that you listed are not great players. Lonnie Walker never really panned out to what people thought he would be. He's an athletic basketball player at this point. That's just what he is. Then you look at a guy like DeJounte Murray. DeJounte Murray is 100% the best player that they've drafted over these last few years. And he provides a good all-around game, but his offensive game is not one that's going to put them over the top. So, of course, it's not one that you look at and you just think, oh, home run pick, even though he's a solid player. Again, it's tough to consistently draft home run guys in the middle of the pack. It rarely happens. Once they realize, you know what, we're not a good team and we're going to stop competing and we're going to try and drop into that 6, that 4 to 8 range draft picks, that's when I'll start to really criticize their draft process. Because name another team really outside of San Antonio that has hit on guys late in the draft outside of the Bulls in the 90s. It really hasn't happened like that.
Toronto.
You know what? That's a very good one for sure. But
Milwaukee too. Middleton. Well, they got the Giannis
for
rarely,
sure.
but
Middleton was in the second round, and that's their core right there. But
Memphis too. Dillon Brooks.
But Ja was
Desmond
2.
Bane.
Jaren was 4, wasn't he?
Brooks, Desmond Bane.
But that's really their core. Ja and Jaren. That's 2 and 4 right there.
I don't even think Mike Conley wasn't a high pick.
He was a high pick.
What pick was he?
He was a 5th pick.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He was that high?
I'm just going based off
What draft was that?
off real contenders.
I forgot, but he was that
what
high.
Really?
Yeah, he
What
was.
name are you guys talking about? I'm sorry.
Mike Conley.
Mike
He gives me
Conley.
such a late lottery guy.
No, he was early. I think he was
a
like
5th pick.
Yeah, he was.
Wow. He gives me like 12th, 13th pick.
Because he's a small dude, but at the same
He's
time,
just regular.
Yeah, he's talented. He's been
It's
talented.
crazy. Okay, I thought.
But you
Well,
guys
my
understand what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to
Oh,
keep
yeah, I'm
reiterating
good.
myself. It's just that it's very rare you see someone consistently hit.
I mean, I think we're
NBA.
going to see them have a top 10 pick.
Oh yeah, I think it's coming
I
sooner
think some of
rather
the top
than later.
5 next year.
Top 5.
I think they need to do that, or else they're going to be caught in this continuous cycle and not get any better.
think-
When they realized that they weren't that good, they were the first pick in the draft. They are the reason why the draft lottery
they
exists.
weren't that good because D-Rob didn't play.
Very true, but they're the reason the draft lottery exists. Because they tanked for Tim Duncan, the lottery exists. So
Is that true, though? Because Detroit tanked for Grant Hill.
that was
They
who
sat
came
Isaiah.
first. But I'm almost 100%.
You're probably right.
I'm pretty positive.
I'm
that
saying they weren't the first team to do it, though. They sat
no.
Isaiah for a season and
the
tanked
fact
for
that they
Grant Hill.
won the championship that first year was what made the NBA notice. All right, if we don't put a stop to this now, teams are just not going to want to play and just sit all their guys and try and get this number 1 pick. It's going to make basketball not entertaining. It's like you want to see competitiveness throughout the entirety, and they haven't done the tanking thing since then. Understandable, they didn't need to. But now they need to understand we're not that same team anymore. We don't have a Tim Duncan anymore, and we need to figure it out soon.
The Spurs signed Doug McDermott and Zach Collins in this free agency.
Yikes.
Their starting lineup next year is going to be DeJounte Murray, Derek White or Devin Vassell, Doug McDermott, Keldon Johnson, and Jakob Poeltl. Is this going to be the worst team in the NBA?
Arguably. Them, Orlando, probably the Kings. Houston will be fighting for that
I think
spot.
Kings will be worse than them.
No, I'm saying they'll be fighting for that spot. You know how teams be. They could be worse than what they really are.
I think it's between the Spurs, Orlando, and that's it.
I'm just not going to doubt Pop. He'll find a way to make them a 10, 11 seed. It's just going to happen inevitably.
They're going to win some games for no reason.
They refuse to quit, and that's just been their MO for years. Until they show me that they're going to tank, I'm not going to say that they're going to be bad.
I think the Spurs will be a bottom 3 team in the NBA next season.
When's the last time that's happened?
Tim Duncan.
That's crazy.
Tim Duncan.